It's quiet. Too quiet. Like the calm before a storm. The air is thick with anticipation. Something evil is brewing. I can feel it in my bones. A darkness is spreading its claws across the heartland, reaching out from the shadows to claim its prize. This is the story of a town lost and a soul found. 3, 2, 1. The silence shatters. It's replaced by a low, rumbling drone, like the earth itself is groaning in pain. A chill runs down my spine. Dodge Creek, Kansas, a town forgotten by time, where secrets fester and nightmares are born. The wind howls through the empty streets. It whispers tales of dread, tales of a darkness growing stronger. The townsfolk, they feel it too, a cold shiver down their spines, a sense of being watched. They draw the curtains, lock their doors, but nothing can keep the evil out. It's already inside. The old Blackwood place, on the edge of town, shrouded in shadow. That's where it began. A young woman, her face contorted in pain, a life being brought into the world. But this was no ordinary birth. This was the arrival of something wicked. The air crackled with unseen energy. The walls themselves seemed to tremble, and a baby's cry pierced the night. A chilling, inhuman shriek. Section 5. The Fallen Shepherd, Father Michael. Once a beacon of faith, now a broken man, haunted by his past. He had failed his flock, a terrible mistake, and the guilt ate at him, driving him further from God. He wandered aimlessly, seeking solace, finding none, until he stumbled upon Dodge Creek, drawn by the palpable darkness, a darkness he recognized. Section 6. Shadows of Doubt. In the heart of a small, secluded town, where the trees whispered secrets and the shadows danced with an eerie grace, a sense of unease began to take root. The once peaceful village was now shrouded in an air of mystery and fear. The news of the demon baby spread like wildfire. Whispered in hushed tones, the townspeople exchanged fearful glances, their voices barely above a whisper. The story was too terrifying to speak aloud, yet too compelling to ignore. It was said that a child born under a blood moon carried the mark of the beast. The villagers, gripped by superstition and dread, could not help but let their imaginations run wild. Fear hung heavy in the air. The fog that rolled in each evening seemed thicker, more oppressive, as if it carried the weight of their collective anxiety. Every creak of a floorboard, every rustle of leaves sent shivers down their spines. The once familiar streets now felt like a labyrinth of terror, where every corner held the potential for unspeakable horrors. Father Michael felt a flicker of doubt. Was he strong enough? The burden of his past failures weighed heavily on his shoulders. He had always been a pillar of strength for his congregation, but now, in the face of such malevolent forces, he questioned his own faith. The dimly lit church, once a sanctuary of solace, now felt like a prison of his own insecurities. Could he face this evil? The question gnawed at him day and night. The ominous building that stood at the edge of town, rumoured to be the birthplace of the demon child, loomed large in his thoughts. It was a place he had avoided, a place that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. Yet he knew that he could not turn away forever. The memory of his past failure loomed large. He had once faced a similar darkness and had faltered. The old, torn photograph he kept hidden in his desk drawer was a constant reminder of that time. It showed a younger, more hopeful version of himself, standing beside a family he had failed to save. The guilt and regret were like chains, binding him to his past. He had lost his faith, lost his way. The cross he held in his hands felt heavy, not just with its physical weight, but with the burden of his doubts. He walked away from the church, his steps slow and uncertain. The path ahead was shrouded in darkness, both literal and metaphorical. He was a man adrift, searching for a beacon of hope in a sea of despair, but the cries of the innocent echoed in his ears. The children, their faces pale with fear, looked to him for protection. Their trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered by the harsh realities of their world. He could not bear to see their hope extinguished. Their cries were a call to action, a reminder that he still had a purpose, a duty to fulfill. He knew he had to try. With renewed determination, Father Michael gripped the cross tightly and set his sights on the dark forest that bordered the town. It was said that the answers he sought lay within its depths. The journey would be perilous, fraught with dangers both seen and unseen, but he could not let fear dictate his actions. He had to confront the shadows of doubt that plagued him and find the strength to protect those who depended on him. The path ahead was uncertain, but his resolve was unwavering. He would face the darkness, not just for himself, but for the innocent lives that hung in the balance. Section 7. A glimmer of hope. The old scriptures. He knew where to find them, long-forgotten rituals, the means to banish the demon. The words seemed to leap off the pages, guiding him, empowering him. A glimmer of hope sparked in his heart. He was not alone in this fight. He had his faith, and he had the power of God on his side. Section 8. Facing the Abyss. The Blackwood House stood before him, a monolith of evil. Its towering structure loomed ominously against the night sky, casting long, sinister shadows that seemed to reach out and grab at the very soul of anyone who dared to approach. The windows, dark and lifeless, were like the eyes of a long-dead creature, watching, waiting. The air around the house was thick with an unnatural chill, a cold that seemed to seep into the bones and freeze the very marrow. He could feel the demonic presence emanating from within. It was a palpable force, a dark energy that pulsed and throbbed like a malignant heartbeat. The shadows inside the house seemed to move and shift of their own accord, forming grotesque shapes that danced and writhed in the corners of his vision. He knew that these were not mere tricks of the light, but manifestations of the evil that had taken root in this place. He stepped across the threshold. The moment his foot crossed the boundary, he felt a wave of malevolence wash over him, as if the house itself were aware of his presence and resented the intrusion. The floorboards creaked under his weight, each step echoing through the empty halls like a death knell. He could feel the eyes of unseen entities upon him, watching his every move with a predatory intensity. Into the belly of the beast, the air grew heavy, suffocating. It was as if the very atmosphere of the house was pressing down on him, trying to crush him under its weight. The walls seemed to close in, the darkness growing thicker and more oppressive with each passing moment. He could hear faint whispers, ghostly voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, their words unintelligible, but filled with malice. The stench of sulphur filled his nostrils. It was a foul, acrid smell that burned his throat and made his eyes water. He knew that this was a sign of the demonic presence, a harbinger of the evil that awaited him. He steeled himself, drawing on every ounce of his courage and resolve. He was ready. He had prepared for this moment, trained for it, and he would not falter now. He would confront the demon. He clutched the crucifix tightly in his hand, its cold metal a reassuring weight. He could feel the power of his faith coursing through him, a beacon of light in the darkness. He knew that the battle ahead would be fierce, that the demon would not relinquish its hold on this place easily. But he was determined. He would face the darkness head-on, and he would not back down, and he would banish it back to the abyss from whence it came. The ritual began, ancient words of power spilling from his lips in a steady, unwavering chant. The air crackled with energy, the very fabric of reality seeming to warp and twist around him. The demon roared in defiance, its unholy presence manifesting in a swirling vortex of shadow and flame. But he stood firm, his faith unshakable. With a final, triumphant cry, he completed the exorcism, and the demon was cast back into the abyss, its screams echoing into the void as it was banished from this world forever. Section 9. The Power of Faith. The demon awaited him. In the attic room, shadows danced on the walls, creating an atmosphere thick with dread. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the very essence of evil had taken residence in this forsaken space. Bathed in an unholy light, the room seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The sinister glow cast eerie shadows that twisted and turned, as if mocking the sanctity of the place. It was a light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, filling the room with a sense of impending doom. Its eyes burned with malevolent glee, two fiery orbs that pierced through the darkness. They were eyes that held centuries of hatred and malice, eyes that had seen the fall of empires and the suffering of countless souls. The demon's gaze was fixed, unblinking, and filled with a terrifying intelligence. The air crackled with energy, a palpable force that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. It was as if the room itself was alive, charged with a supernatural electricity that made the hairs on the back of one's neck stand on end. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a tension that was almost unbearable. The battle for the baby's soul had begun. The demon moved closer to the crib, its shadowy form looming over the innocent child. The air grew colder, and the baby's cries echoed through the room, a desperate plea for salvation. It was a moment of pure terror, a clash between the forces of good and evil. Father Michael raised his crucifix, the symbol of his unwavering faith. The crucifix glowed with a divine light, a beacon of hope in the darkness. He stood firm, his eyes locked on the demonic figure, his heart filled with the strength of his convictions. This was his calling, his purpose, and he would not falter. The power of his faith surged through him, a divine energy that filled every fiber of his being. He felt the presence of a higher power, a force that was greater than any evil. It was a power that came from his unwavering belief, a faith that had been tested and proven time and time again. Latin words flowed from his lips. Ancient and powerful, they resonated through the room, each syllable a weapon against the darkness. The words were a sacred incantation, a ritual passed down through the ages, imbued with the power of countless prayers and blessings. They were words that held the weight of history, words that could banish even the most malevolent of spirits. The demon writhed in fury, its form contorting in agony. It was a creature of darkness, and the light of faith was like a burning fire, searing its very essence. The demon's screams filled the room, a cacophony of rage and pain. It was a battle of wills, a struggle between the forces of light and darkness. But it was no match for the righteous might of God. The divine light grew stronger, enveloping the demon in a blinding radiance. It was a light that purified, a light that banished all shadows. The demon's form began to dissolve, its power waning in the face of such overwhelming holiness. In that moment, the room was filled with a sense of peace, a calm that signaled the end of the battle. The power of faith had triumphed, and the forces of darkness were vanquished.